Hi Parshva, how are you?
Hey, good. Thank you, Rehat. I'm well. How are you?
I'm good. Just for the audience here, Parshva has graduated from our B.B.A. LL.B batch of, from JGLS in 2022. And he went on to do his Masters of Law in Monash University. Parshva, just to kick off the whole webinar, I'll, turn over to you and ask you my first question. So, could you tell us a little bit about your journey at, Jindal itself and how you came to become a solicitor in Australia?
Yeah. So I graduated from Jindal Global Law School in 2022. I was there for 5 years doing the BBA LLB honors integrated law degree. And during my final year of law school, I started planning to pursue my Master of Laws at Monash, which in hindsight could have been planned better. Like, you shouldn't be planning this in your last semester, but it's never too late. Like, you should ideally do it earlier. But yeah, if you take my example, it's never too late. So I started my course of my masters in Monash in around September, and August, if I'm not wrong, was when we graduated from Jindal. So it was like quite one after the other, not enough break in between. But that's how I wanted it. I wanted to straight dive into another thing that'll keep me busy rather than me trying to figure out what to do with my life at that point of time. Um, while I was studying my masters, I was working as well in a part-time capacity at a law firm in Melbourne, and which helped me get local experience early on. And after completing my LL.M, I went through the practical legal training, which we can also get into subsequently, and then got admitted through the Victorian Legal Admissions Board, which ultimately led to my admission as a solicitor this year in the Supreme Court. And yeah, now I'm working as a lawyer at another law firm. It's been a long process, but every step I feel, from JGLS to working at DWF now, really built on the last one. Um, yeah, if that makes sense.
Just along those lines, Parshva, so how was the Jindal experience for you? So, even personally and professionally, what all do you think have learned from the institution itself that has, led you to become the person that you are right now, or anything that you would like to share with the students that would be seeing this webinar online?
Yeah. So I essentially Jindal gave me the motivation I needed to pursue this career pathway. I actually listened to a webinar by another senior student from Jindal who had gone to Sydney to pursue her masters and transition her career there to become a solicitor in Australia. And that's what inspired me and actually gave me like an avenue to pursue. So Jindal, uh, in its many advantages, the biggest one that I would find is that it gives you the opportunity to pursue whatever your goals might be. Like, a lot of my friends are working in commercial law in all over India, like various states. They're not confined or restricted to the state where they're from. uh, Network as such is like a really good opportunity to develop a network in Jindal, which comes really handy at a later point in your career. So yeah, I would say the main advantage of Jindal, like in terms of your career, is the opportunities that you can find along the way and the network you can build. Other than that, in my personal experiences, that I really am fond of during my time at Jindal included uh, just hanging out with friends a lot. I wasn't that great of a student. Like, I wasn't getting ace marks. I wasn't even in the top 10-20% of my class, but I wasn't bad either. And the fact that you have good faculty a good faculty to student ratio at Jindal, which means that you can essentially get more attention from a single faculty member. All of those factors help, and they have contributed to my journey here. Another thing I would say that helped me while being in Jindal was the fact that we had an international cohort of professors and faculty. That helps you get an understanding of how different people across the world operate, and how different legal mechanisms operate as well. For example, I had Ronald Blue for my torts subject, which I remember, and it didn't go great for me at that point of time. But the work that I'm currently doing is quite related to torts and negligence and duty of care and stuff. So I would say that those kind of uh, challenges and opportunities, I think that both two sides of the same coin can really benefit you in the long run as a general student.
So, for my next question, I would like to ask you, so what are the steps that actually the Indian law graduates can take, to become solicitor in Australia itself or qualify for the same job?
Yeah. So I'll just quickly go over what the difference between a solicitor and a barrister is as compared to a lawyer. At my understanding, which is also quite basic, is that a lawyer is anyone who's done a law degree. Like, you can call yourself a lawyer. It's not a statutory based term that you have to that you can only use after you've completed a set of requirements. Once you've completed a law degree, if you're working in the field of law, you can call yourself a lawyer. uh, in India, a lawyer is someone who, other than completing a law degree, also has, I mean, an advocate is the right term, who has registered with the Bar Council, and then you can essentially represent clients and act for clients, go to court, and do all of the duties that a lawyer does, like what you typically think of. In Australia, however, there is a very critical distinction between a solicitor and a barrister, which basically means that a lawyer can be either or. It can be a solicitor or a barrister. But most of the times, people start their careers as a solicitor. A solicitor is someone who solicits clients and uh, puts them through in touch with a barrister if needed when the case progresses through those stages. So a barrister essentially doesn't always get involved in cases in the legal proceedings in Australia, but a solicitor always does, and a client cannot directly reach out to a barrister in Australia. So you can only go through a solicitor, and that's why there's that hierarchy of uh, client going through a solicitor, then the barrister. And I don't mean it in the sense that there is a power hierarchy, but it's more like a communication hierarchy that. The solicitors brief the barristers before any hearing. So the barristers essentially rely upon the solicitors' knowledge that they have investigated and collated from the client. So that's the difference. So uh, the journey of becoming a solicitor in Australia starts with getting your legal qualifications assessed as an international law student. So what you would need to do is, there are legal admission boards all across Australia in different states. There's a different one. So in Victoria, where I'm based, we have the Victorian Legal Admissions Board, which is the VLAB, and all of these admission boards, they go off of the same regulation. So they're essentially all operating within the same rules, but they just have slightly different regulations and stuff. Um, so what you need to do is, you give your Indian law qualification for assessment. They assess it and give you a list of subjects that you need to complete in order to qualify to become a solicitor. Those subjects often include the priestly 11 subjects. Those are the core subjects that you have to do in Australia before you can become a lawyer. And all law degrees like JD and LL.B and B.A. or B.B.A. LL.B, all of these cover these 11 priestly subjects. So what happens when you're a Jindal graduate, specifically, is that there is a MOU signed with the legal admission boards and Jindal that essentially allows you to get an exemption in 7 of these 11 priestly subjects. So you only have to do 4. I mean, there's a catch that you have to score like A minus or B plus or something in all of the subjects. but they can even waive off that requirement if you give a compelling reason, and if there's only one subject that you didn't receive the necessary required mark in. So once you've gotten that, then you would have to find admission in a university which can give you those subjects, which can teach you those specific subjects, and essentially then you can then you can do your PL. So then you apply to the VLab again, saying that you have completed the prescribed subjects, and then they give you another requirement, which is to complete your practical legal training. Now, this is a standalone course. This is like a legal diploma of sorts that there are like three providers in Australia that offer this course. And it's compulsory for every lawyer to do in order to become a solicitor. This is essentially like you learn about the procedures and practical things that a lawyer would need in when starting their career. It's like a lot of drafting and stuff, and like ethics and those small things that you don't really learn in law school but are very handy when you're practicing law. So you've got to do that course, and then once that is done, you apply to VLab again, and they waive off all of these requirements, and then they say that you're now eligible to be admitted. So you book an admission ceremony, which is at the Supreme Court of Victoria. Another thing to note is that in Australia, Supreme Court is not the highest court, unlike in India. High Court is the highest court, and Supreme Court is one for every state. So you get admitted in the state Supreme Court, and then you sign a roll of solicitors that exists in that court. And after you sign that, then you become a solicitor. There's no bar exam, essentially, like what happens in India, for you to become a solicitor. However, if you want to become a barrister, then you need to give the bar. And a a trend that you notice in the legal fraternity here is that barristers tend to be of slightly higher age than solicitors. Solicitors are generally fresh lawyers, young in their career, and once they have some experience under their belt, then they transition to a barrister. I don't know if that answers your question. Does it? The whole process of becoming a solicitor.
Yes, yes. It's I think a lot of people will find this very helpful. So is there anything else you'd like to add to that point?
Yeah, so I mean, another thing to keep in mind would be your visa situations. So that like it plays a big part in your decisions and things you need to consider before making a decision to pursue a career in another country. So the catch is that even though you don't need to do all of the other legal subjects, you can get an exemption in the 7 of the 11 priestly subjects. Like I said, if you're from Jindal, and I feel like maybe other universities can also, students from other universities can also apply for this exemption and see how many subjects that are prescribed to them and go according to that. But if you have, even if you have the exemption of these 7 subjects and you only have to do 4, you can't get a visa to stay in the country to work unless you do a 2-year course. So a 1-year course in Australia doesn't get you a temporary resident visa, which would allow you to work after the course. So you have to do a 2-year course, or you have to do 2 years combined of education. So like you can do 1 year's course of these 4 subjects at one university and do another 1-year course. But that's a bit complicated. So I took the pathway of doing a 2-year LL.M from Monash, which essentially allowed me to do the 4 subjects while also doing a Master of Laws in the subject that I wanted to do, like specialized subjects. Um, I think that was the only pathway when I was applying for my masters. That was the only pathway that I could find in the state of Melbourne, in the state of Victoria, which would allow me to do this. And this was the only smooth pathway as well. Um, the only other pathway I would think would be that you apply for admission in like individual courses for like each of the 4 subjects that you need to do, and yeah, and go off of that, like what the university tells you. But yeah, my pathway was doing a 2-year course from Monash, and you can only do this 2-year course if you have an exemption from the legal admissions board, because you can't be doing like all 11 subjects and also a master's in 2 years. because those 11 subjects will end up taking your 2 years. So what you need to do is you need to have like at least 5 or 6 exempted, so that they can fit that whole course into 2 years. Um, yeah, yeah, that's, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, it does. I think you've answered my question pretty beautifully. So I just actually want to focus on how was your experience at Monash. So I think Jindal has, international students that come in, from outside, and Monash is one of the universities that the international students that come from there. So how was your experience in the university itself, like on ground?
Well, I would say that coming from Jindal, it wasn't what I expected it to be. I'm not saying that it was bad or disappointing, but it wasn't what I expected coming into another law school. But I also feel like that's something you learn when you're doing your masters, that you can't expect it to be the same as what it was when you were doing your undergrad. Because an undergrad at Monash would also, like, I think that would also that would compare really well to what the course at Jindal was like, because it's like a residential sort of a course, and it's like on a big campus, and they're all young students, so they all feed off of each other's energy, and it's all it's a nice learning environment. However, when you're doing your masters, there's a different postgraduate building from Monash, like that's another campus that's in the city. The advantage of that is it's surrounded on all four sides and even on other floors, like above it and below it, by law firms and legal people all around. So it's a good opportunity to like network and build a like a fairly decent sized network while you're studying. But yeah, the drawback would be that like there's not many sports and recreation activities that are possible in that city campus, because that's obviously in a building along with the courts and the other law firms. Yeah, but having said that, Monash has some great opportunities. You can always go to the Clayton campus, which is like the big campus, and enjoy the recreational activities there. And like they have a lot of recreational and co-curricular activities throughout the year. So in that way, it is quite similar to Jindal, and it is like a similar experience. I would say also that another a big thing to look out for when you first get here is that the the kind of work that you get in in a law school in Australia would be similar to what you would get in Jindal, but the answers that you need to generate are very different. Like the approach that the Australian universities tend to adopt is, and even the workplaces, in my experience, that you have to be as succinct as possible, keep everything brief, and yeah, not dragging anything on, which I feel like happens in the Indian context a lot. Like even just the Indian legal jargon, uh, Indian lawyers love using the legal jargon and making things more complicated. I feel like that's like a shift. That was like a big shift in the culture I saw here. Um, yeah. Was that Does that answer your question?
Yes,
Kind
yes,
of.
it answers my question. So, for the next part of the whole session, so what is your role at DWF like, Parshva? So, I want to delve a little more into that, and if you could elaborate on your role in the whole law firm, and how does your practice look like on a daily basis? So, yeah.
So my practice, like I'm fairly recent. I've started fairly recently at DWF. Um, since I became a solicitor, which was in July of this year. So I would say my daily like I was kind of thrown in the deep end of things, I feel, and but I feel like that's the best way to learn, like trial and error, and just like that's how I learned swimming as well. So I feel like that works for me. Um, y- I do civil litigation, so most of my work involves like drafting notices, pleadings, in because we I do a lot of defense work, so a lot of defenses and interrogatories, answers to interrogatories. Then we have mediations, informal settlement conferences, negotiations with the other parties to try and settle. um, and mediations are like quite a big thing for us. We tend to like the opportunity to settle, to avoid costs, and yeah, and just make our client get like a better outcome than having to go to court. um, but reaching here was like a big journey in itself, because I started in the personal injury space at IDP Lawyers, who are one of the panel firms for WorkSafe, and they essentially give you they essentially give WorkSafe a legal representation. WorkSafe is the government organization that ensures that every employer in Victoria has work insurance. So any injury that happens at work, we were dealing with that. So on the defense side, so I do a lot of personal injury work. At my new law firm, I'm doing a lot of public liability as well, which is essentially when someone gets injured at a business. Like you must have heard that, or at least the students would have, the law students. There was this very famous case in the US where a coffee from McDonald's had spilled on someone, and she had sued McDonald's for a big amount, and she got a big settlement sum as well, just because they didn't have the warning on the coffee cup, which said that use caution. So those sort of things are quite interesting. I never really wanted to get into this field when I was studying law, but it just so happened that I got the first job in this field and developed an interest. And I realized that it actually aligns with my interest to pursue ADR instead of like court litigation. I was a member of the ADR Society in Jindal as well, so I was big on mediations and negotiations and stuff to try and settle, and to do that in real life now is quite interesting and quite fascinating.
So, Parshva, how is personal injury law different in Australia than it is in India? So, could you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah. So, well, in Australia, there is the common law as well as a lot of statutes, which like a lot of legislations which govern how personal injury matters are to be processed and progressed. Um, but in India, even though there is common law, so like we can still rely on those same common law precedents, kind of. Uh, a thorough and like a robust uh, statutory mechanism still isn't there. Like it's still something that needs to be developed in India. In Australia, for example, we have like separate schemes for workplace injuries, and then we have transport accidents, and then we have the Wrongs Act, which takes care of like which governs public liability stuff, like if you get injured with a product or at a business. Uh, and so there's a lot of legislation which governs the processes, and there is also common law which you can rely on for precedents and to a certain to like assess damages and stuff. So you get like general damages as well on top of like other damages like pain and suffering, medical bills, loss of income, loss of future income. However, in India, like I think we have the Motor Vehicles Act and some labor compensation mechanisms, but personal injury isn't like a major standalone field. And personal injury exists as one of the biggest law fields in Australia and even in US, I feel. So I feel like the Indian legal system is really like facing a big hindrance in their development, in its development, because of the lack of growth in this field. Um, Most of the claims in India, I feel like are like broader tort litigation, maybe like defamation. I've heard a lot of like defamatory complaints being put in India, especially politicians and stuff tend to do that. But yeah, I still don't think that it's like it's relatively still quite unregulated and very case specific, instead of like how it should be. Like it should have a procedure and it should be insurer driven, and insurance also needs to like so it goes hand in hand. Personal injury can only become big if the insurance industry also is there to support it. So I essentially at DWF we work for an insurance syndicate, which insures these businesses where the injury occurs. So we get our instructions from the insurance companies, but we represent the businesses. So there's like a flow of things that tends to happen because of the uh, multiple stakeholders that are involved, and everyone's serious about their jobs. Everyone has a lot to lose. Yeah, so I feel like that right now isn't there in India, but might be someday. There's a big scope of like workplace injuries in India that just go unnoticed. Like there are workers in Bihar and stuff who have silicosis because of working in mines, and they literally have no recourse. They don't know what to do. Even class actions in India take like years and rarely ever happens. Um, yeah, we all know about like the Bhopal gas tragedy, but like there needs to be like smaller like statutes and like procedures for smaller cases as well, where such a big disaster doesn't happen, but you still have like a recourse available to people who have suffered an injury. Yeah, I feel like that's like the major difference between India and Australia in terms of personal injury space.
Right. So, I want to actually come back to your own personal experiences there in Australia. So, what all challenges, except the ones that you've already mentioned with the, your LLM degree, and how it is completely different from a little different from what you learned at Jindal, and how to, um, uh, imbibe yourself there. So, is there anything else, any other challenges there that you want to share with us?
I mean, even though you come to Australia thinking it's an English speaking country, once you start working here, you realize that it's another language. You have to sort of be switched on to understand what everyone's saying in what accent, because it's like it feels like it's all over the place when you first get here. And whatever you speak as well, like hardly people understand it. And you're just like shocked. You're like, oh, what? Like I've studied English for all my life, like 24 years, 22 years, and people still don't understand me. So you have to like uh be prepared that there are going to be changes that you're going to have to make to essentially fit yourself into the social structure here, which I feel is very important to develop your soft skills. Like your academic qualifications can be all well and amazing, but until you have the soft skills to like converse with anyone, any person, any random person on the street, it'll be hard for you to get a good role, like a client facing role at least, because yeah, just because people need to understand you and you need to understand them. What And that's like one of the biggest fields, of like one of the biggest challenges that you can face when a student comes here. Another challenge would be like expenses and stuff. You got to learn how to manage your expenses. It's not like in India, everything's quite expensive. But if you get a part-time job and stuff, that can help, which I did as well. So that helped me. And in Australia, no one looks down upon doing like hospitality jobs or like retail jobs. And it, as a matter of fact, a tradie who's a tradesperson, like a plumber or a carpenter, earns more than what I would be earning at the same level. So I feel like a partner at a law firm would make the same amount of money uh, that a tradie would make in half the time. Uh, yeah, so like Australia is different like that. Like blue collar jobs and physical work is quite important here. So when you do come here, you'll sort of see those differences and you'll see those things as challenges, but take that as like as a as an advantage instead of a challenge, that you can now do something you can never do in India. You can earn for yourself while studying, like which hardly happens in India. Like people tend to finish till they've studied everything that they have to study and then start a job. And also like working contemporaneously while studying also gives you like a good practical understanding of how things work. So finding a job is really important. Like work, do like free internships, do unpaid internships, do whatever to get your foot in the door. And once you have that, then you can leverage that to get a job. uh, in my personal experience, I was not getting a job when I first got here, like for the first couple of months, and I was stressing out because everyone's working as well, so you don't feel happy when you're not working, not doing anything. So I was looking for a job, and I was doing yeah, I was just looking for odd jobs because I wasn't able to get a legal job. And then I found like this legal internship, which I did for like 2 months before I got another legal volunteer role at a legal aid clinic. So which I did, which I yeah, I think I was there for another 2 months, and that led me to actually get the job at IDP while I was doing my masters. And I feel like once you have a little bit of Australian experience, they tend to take your Indian experience more seriously as well. Because when you first reach Australia, your CV is just like intern, 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 intern. There's like 10 internships and your law degree. And that's all you've done essentially, right? No one really works while you're studying, and it's not possible as well. And internships in India are always like 2 month long, and you get no money, or maybe like a menial 10K 20K for it. uh, so explaining that to prospective employers in Australia, that why those sort of internships exist in India, because that doesn't exist here. People don't intern for like a month or 2 months and then move on to the next thing, because it's quite like less time to essentially learn anything as well. Um, so once you have a little bit of Australian experience, then they tend to take you more seriously. Okay, this person's verified now that they've worked here, so then they sort of take your Indian experience seriously, and you can use that to get like a job and make your case. So that's a challenge. Another challenge, I would say, it is hard making friends and stuff when you first move to another country. But yeah, just going out, going to events, especially Melbourne, which is like the cultural capital of Australia. We have like the F1 here, we have Wimbledon like the Australian Open here. We have a lot of cricket matches. I'm going for one tomorrow, in fact, India versus Australia. So there's a lot of cultural activities that you can go to and try to make like a social circle, make some friends, which you would need if you want to pursue a career abroad, like in any country, I would say, not just Australia. Another challenge, I would say, is I didn't find it as a challenge, but every other Indian I know finds it as a challenge, is managing your visas and just like your timeline, and like these administrative things. Like be on top of them as much as you can. If you're planning to pursue a career in Australia or even in another country, just start planning everything out a year in advance. Like what's the sort of pathway that's there for you. uh, Fully plan it out so nothing takes you by surprise when things work out or don't work out. Have some backups. So that's what I felt like. Every time someone would ask me what's your plan, I would like give them a whole 15-minute lecture on this is the first step, this is the second step, this is the third step. Finally, I'd be admitted as an Australian solicitor, and I'd work as at an Australian law firm. And now I'm finally there. But like you need to have that ladder clear in your head. Like what are the steps you need to take? Um, yeah, those are the majorly big challenges I would say I faced. But having said that, there's a lot of fun things to do in Australia as well. So if you are like considering moving to another country, I would say look at Australia. The biggest advantage would be that guns aren't legal here, like in America, um, which can be quite dangerous and distressing, as we have seen in recent times. And the UK is quite cooked as well right now. It's got uh, yeah, a lot of crime, no, not much space. I don't think it's a developing economy anymore. It's supposed to be a developed economy, but I don't think it's like there's any growth left in the UK. I think there's only downfall. Uh, But I have some good friends in the UK as well, so I hope they don't fucking take offense at this. Yeah.
So, Parshva, just along those lines, the challenges that you've had. So, is there anything, any advice that you'd like to give to the current students at JGLS or any prospective students that want to come to Jindal, pursue their law here? Just to wrap up the whole session, if you could give like 1 or 2 points of advice to the students here.
Yeah. So to the prospective students, I would say Jindal is a great place. I don't know what I bet it's better than how I left it now, but Jindal was a great experience for me personally. I feel like it opened my eyes to so many opportunities and places that exist in the world where I can go and practice my legal career, which I didn't know that was there before. I didn't even know that law can take you to another country, because I thought once you do a law, like once you do a law degree of one country, you're essentially bound by that country's of like laws and you have to practice there. But that's not true, and what you learn in Jindal is quite transferable. Uh, the fact that you have to solve problems, manage expectations, have good communication, all of these skills I developed in Jindal and they helped me here. So I feel like Jindal is a really good choice if you want to develop yourself as a person, and that helps in whatever you want to do later. To the students who are right now studying at Jindal and thinking of a career move to another country, I would say don't uh, don't have expectations which can disappoint you, but have enough preparation that nothing can throw you off. When you're planning your journey or career in another country, just like prepare as much as you can, and there would be nothing that takes you by surprise. Yeah, I would also say that do look at other countries and other places that you can get experience that you can't get in India. Because even if you do want to one day essentially come back and work in India, this will give you insight onto how the world works and how things can be more efficient, can be better, and we can implement those things in India and become quite successful as well. So even if you don't want to settle in another country, look at it as an option. You can always take the learnings of what you've done in another country and take them back home and implement them there.
So, Parshva, this we have reached the end of our session and our timeline. So, thank you so much for doing this and connecting with us. I hope we get to do another one of these with you, so we can have a phase two of the whole, topic itself. So, yeah, thank you so much, and thanks for connecting with us.
Yeah, no worries. Best of luck to you and to all the students who end up listening to this.
Yes, thank you so much. All right, bye bye.
Bye bye. Thank you.